By the end of the 6th century BCE, the Persian Empire was enormous. It stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, and from Egypt all the way to the Aral Sea. It seemed unstoppable until 499 BCE, when the Greek cities in Asia Minor decided they'd had enough. Led by Aristagoras, ruler of Miletus, the Greek rebels attacked the Persian city of Sardis and set fire to its temples. That act triggered chain reaction. The Persians wouldn't forget the insult. Years later, in 480 BCE, King Xerxes, son of Darius, marched toward Greece. His goal wasn't just revenge for Sardis or the Persian loss at Marathon. He wanted to bring all of Greece under Persian rule. News of the invasion reached Sparta, where one of the kings, Leonidas, made a bold choice. He would take his personal guard to hold off the Persian army at Thermopylae, a narrow pass that served as a main entrance to central Greece. Spartan culture revolved around three things: strict education, military discipline, and strong religious beliefs. Those beliefs sometimes got in the way of military action. For example, in 490 BCE, Sparta didn't help Athens at the Battle of Marathon because they were in the middle of a religious festival and couldn't leave until it ended. By 480 BCE, with another Persian invasion looming, Greek city-states gathered at the Temple of Poseidon in Corinth. They swore a solemn oath and formed what became known as the Hellenic League, a rare show of unity. Though outnumbered, they decided to block the Persians at a narrow mountain pass where large armies couldn't spread out. It was their best shot. Leonidas presented his plan to the Spartan council. But again, religious customs interfered. It was the time of the Carnea festival. He wasn't allowed to take the full army. However, he did get approval to take his elite bodyguard, 300 Spartans. For Leonidas, this wasn't just military duty. It was personal. A prophecy from the oracle at Delphi had said that one of Sparta's 2 kings would have to die to save their land. Leonidas took that as his own burden. This would be the first time in history that a Spartan king died in battle. By then, the Persian Empire had already taken Thrace and Macedonia. Local elites in Thessaly had agreed to let Xerxes pass through. That made Thermopylae the best place for the Greeks to stand their ground. It was a narrow coastal strip between the mountains and the sea, hard to flank, and perfect for defending against a larger army. Leonidas believed the tight space would block the Persians from using their full strength. The cliffs on one side gave extra protection to the Greek phalanx formation. Even better, the nearby strait allowed the Greek navy to confront Persian ships and protect the army's rear. Choosing the 300 Spartans for this mission was serious business. These men weren't just any soldiers. They were the king's personal guard called Hippias. Despite the name meaning horsemen, they fought on foot, shoulder to shoulder with the king. Only Spartans aged 20 to 29 could compete for a place in this elite unit. They had to prove their courage, skill, and physical strength. But for this mission, they needed something more: the willingness to die. Spartan training taught that coming back alive from a lost battle was disgraceful. Survivors could be marked with shameful cloak, lose their citizen rights, and be shunned in public life, even in marriage. 2 of Leonidas' men, Pantites and Aristodemus, survived the battle for different reasons, but neither could live with the shame. Pantites took his own life. Aristodemus later died in battle at Plataea, seeking to redeem himself. Knowing this was a one-way mission, Leonidas made sure every man in the 300 had at least one son to carry on the family line after they were gone. It's likely that Leonidas also wanted to see for himself the strength of the women who would soon become widows. He met all the requirements for this mission. His wife, Queen Gorgo, had already given birth to a son named Pleistarchus, who would later become king after 2 regents, Cleombrotus and Pausanias, governed in his place. Gorgo, known for her sharp mind and resolve, showed no fear about her husband's fate. In the heat of summer in 480 BCE, Leonidas set out with his 300 elite Spartans. They were joined by around 1,000 Perioeci and 1,000 Helots, non-citizen groups who supported the Spartan army. Their journey began through the eastern Peloponnesus, where another 4,000 fighters joined them. They crossed the Isthmus of Corinth, passed through Boeotia, where only 400 Thebans and 700 Thespians joined the effort, and finally met with about 1,000 soldiers from Phocis and Locris. These were the people who had the most to lose from a Persian invasion. All in all, Leonidas had a force of around 7,000 men to face a Persian army that may have numbered close to 200,000. When they arrived at Thermopylae, the Greeks camped by an old wall built long ago by the Phocians. They quickly rebuilt and fortified it to strengthen their position. A few days passed while a storm off the coast of Magnesia damaged part of Xerxes' fleet. When the weather cleared, Xerxes sent Leonidas a demand: "Surrender your weapons." The Spartan king replied bluntly, "Come and take them." Then came one of the most well-known battles in history, lasting 3 brutal days. Xerxes began by sending his Median and Scythian troops to break through. From the first contact, the Greek phalanx showed its superiority. Tight formations, heavy shields, and longer spears overwhelmed the attackers. Herodotus wrote that the Persians kept charging, only to be replaced by more men. With waves of casualties piling up, Xerxes had numbers, but few of his men were trained warriors. He then ordered his elite force, the Immortals, his personal guard, but they fared no better. The longer reach of the Greek spears and the Spartans' disciplined maneuvers cut them down as well. Frustrated, Xerxes turned to his navy. He launched an attack at Cape Artemisium, aiming to land behind the Greek forces. But his ships were still recovering from storm damage, and the sea battle ended in a stalemate. By the end of the second day, Xerxes was still stuck. That's when a local named Ephialtes revealed a secret mountain trail that could be used to flank the Greeks. His betrayal changed everything. When Leonidas heard about this, he made a key decision. Instead of forcing all the Greek allies to stay and die, he told most of them to go home and defend their cities later. He remained at the pass with his 300 Spartans, a group of Helots and Parisii, and soldiers from Phocis. The Spartans couldn't imagine returning from a lost battle. The Thespians and Thebans who stayed had their own reasons. They were committed to the fight. On the third day at dawn, Leonidas and his remaining men prepared for their final stand. As the Persians came from both front and rear, the Greeks fought with fierce energy. Even as their spears broke, they continued using swords, refusing to give in. Leonidas was killed during this last stand. A fierce battle broke out over his body. The Greeks recovered it several times, forcing the Persians back repeatedly. But in the end, all the defenders at the pass were killed. After the battle, Xerxes reportedly walked among the dead. In anger, he ordered Leonidas' head to be cut off and placed on a stake. Days later, after the Persians had moved on, a group of Spartans returned to find Leonidas' body. They buried what was left of him at the battlefield. 40 years later, Sparta retrieved his remains and brought them home for a proper burial. A marker was placed with his name and those of the 300 Spartans who died with him. Near the Acropolis, a shrine called the Leonidaeum was built to honor him. It became the center of annual religious ceremonies, and Leonidas was remembered as more than a king. He was revered as a hero. The impact of the battle was enormous. Over 20,000 Persian soldiers, many from elite units, were killed during those 3 days. The Greeks learned that Xerxes' forces were not invincible, and they began to believe they could win. Without this heroic defense at Thermopylae, the Greeks may never have had the momentum to win the naval battle at Salamis a month later, or to crush the Persian expedition for good the next year at Plataea. Leonidas' last stand didn't just shape the outcome of a war. It became a lasting example of courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable resolve, one that helped shape the future of Western history. The stand at Thermopylae wasn't just a battle, it was a statement. Outnumbered and surrounded, Leonidas and his men didn't flinch. They chose to hold the line, not because they thought they could win, but because they believed some values are worth dying for: freedom, duty, and honor. Their sacrifice lit a fire across Greece. It showed that the Persians, no matter how vast their armies, could be resisted. It rallied divided cities, inspired fresh courage, and became the spark that helped lead to later victories at Salamis and Plataea. Without Thermopylae, the Greek resistance may have collapsed before it ever had a chance to succeed. But beyond the tactics and outcomes, this story endured because it touches something deeper. It speaks to the power of leadership, the strength of unity in the face of fear, and the quiet bravery of ordinary people asked to do the extraordinary. Leonidas didn't march into battle with illusions. He knew what it would cost. Yet he still walked forward, taking 300 men with him, not for conquest, but for the hope that others would rise when they saw what courage looked like. That's why Thermopylae has echoed through time. It's been told and retold for centuries, not because it ended in victory, but because it revealed what resilience and sacrifice can achieve. It's a reminder that real strength doesn't always come from numbers or power, but from belief, conviction, and refusing to back down. In the end, Leonidas and the Spartans were not just soldiers. They became symbols. Their names were carved into stone, their story passed from generation to generation, not as legends, but as examples of what people can do when they stand together with purpose. Today, the battlefield at Thermopylae looks different. The sea has receded, the terrain has shifted, but the message remains. It's a place where a few held back an empire, where courage stood firm against fear, and where a moment of resistance helped shape the path of history. It's not just a Greek story. It's a human one, and it continues to inspire because it reminds us of what people are capable of when they refuse to give up